Hey guys, welcome to Blazing Guitars, where we talk about worship gear, music, guitar, and everything in between. My name is Blaze Nelson, and today I wanted to talk about something that I saw recently on the gear page. There was a trending thread a couple weeks back where a user was asking how you would go about addressing a bandmate who needs to practice more. I thought that was a really interesting question and one that's important to engage in as a worship leader and as just a worship team. And so I'd love to talk about it today, share some thoughts. So with that, let's jump into it. So when you're thinking about this question, I think there's a really important starting place that everybody should kind of take into consideration as you're thinking about addressing a bandmate who's not practicing. And that would be actually twofold. So the first piece of it would be where your band's culture currently is, and then the second piece would be where you want your band's culture to go. So when you think about culture is really interesting because I think it defines kind of a set of behaviors that are acceptable for a group of people. It also defines what success looks like. It defines how much you put into it. It defines a lot about a band. And so if you have an underperforming member and you're wanting to talk to them, but your band's culture is not one that promotes practice and not one that promotes excellence, then that is where I would start before you have the conversation with the individual. So you need to think about, what kind of culture do we have? What are the norms that are happening? Do we have a culture where people are practicing and trying to get better? Or do we have a culture where people are just putting in the bare minimum amount of work and showing up and trying to get out as fast as possible? The other piece of that I would take into consideration is, what does success look like for you and your body? I know that I've talked about this before, but some people would define success as a set that is played perfectly. And some people would define success as a set where you only have 15 mistakes. And it's important to define a realistic expectation of what success looks like for you, and to very seriously sit down and evaluate, man, is our band at a spot where, A, do I have too high of an expectation for our band? And then B, what is reasonable and what do we want as a church, and what do the pastors want, and what direction are we heading? So take all of that into consideration, and if you're still wanting to have that conversation with a person, and your culture is not there, then what I would suggest is to start taking steps to fix the culture and to right the culture maybe before having the conversation. So a couple things that we try to do, I know for a lot of people excellence is the standard. What we try to say, and what I try to hold to myself, is how can I be a little bit more excellent than the previous week? What can I do differently this week that will make me a little bit better than how I performed the previous week? And then another thing that we try to do is to take band practices really seriously. And so really work through kinks of songs and really work through things, don't just blow through the songs, but if there's something that needs to be worked on, take the time to sit down and work on it. And also take the time to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the part that they're playing. Another piece of our culture that I've really enjoyed is that feedback is welcomed and encouraged. And so I know I try to do it pretty faithfully. I don't do it every week, but me and another drummer does it every week. We try to go back through our live stream the previous week and just pull out ideas of things that we can improve on, things that, give feedback to ourselves first, like, oh man, that guitar solo was a little long or a little loud or not clean, I need to clean that up. And just try to sit with some of those things and work on them ourselves before we then go try to bring things to other people. So the second thing to take into consideration, and it actually ties in pretty closely to the first, is to look at yourself, especially if you're the band leader, and to make sure that you're not asking people to do something that you yourself are not willing to do. So I think about like practice. There's been times in my life where I've been either too busy or have not made the time to practice consistently. And so, and I found myself in the spot where I want to ask one of my bandmates to practice more. And I've really had to take a step back and be like, man, Blaze, if you want to ask this person to practice more, then you yourself have to be willing to be putting in the time, and you have to be the one who's setting the standard. And so I think that's really important, is if you're not setting the standard and you're asking somebody else to step up to a standard that you yourself are not willing to hold, then it's not time to have that conversation with the person. Go and address some of the stuff and try to grow in some of the stuff that you're doing, and then potentially have that conversation with the person. Another really important aspect of this is to have readily available training materials. So if you look at somebody and say, hey, you need to get better at this, that's not really helpful. Make sure that you have constructive criticism. So provide resources that they could practice, come up with maybe like a really specific area that you feel like they could grow in, and then work from there. So don't say like, hey, you need to get better at everything. You could pull somebody aside and say, hey brother, I think your timing is a little bit off. Maybe if you sat down with the metronome a little bit, that might help you a lot. I think if you do something like that versus kind of an overarching, give them something really specific to work on, not just this unending, boundless critique of their playing. Give them some specific areas that they can work on. So the final piece in this is just to make sure that you have the relational bandwidth to give critique, and that's part of your relationship, and that there's enough relational trust there to take critique without attacking them as a person or attacking their skills or who they are. So just make sure that you're not like, if you're in conflict with somebody a lot and you happen to decide that they need to get better, then you go and just bring that as part of the conflict as well, then that's not going to go well. You really want to make sure that you have a good relationship, good rapport. If you don't have that, then put the brakes on critiquing them and try and develop that more and more, and maybe even have conversations around inviting them to speak into your life as well. So I think it's a lot easier to take critique from somebody who is humble and who is willing to take critiques themselves. And when you're dealing with somebody like that, then it's really easy to take critique from that person. So make sure that you're that person, work on that relationship, make sure that you're going in the direction. And then I know I said that the last one was the final thing, but the final thing that I would say in this too is just to make sure that you're recognizing and solidifying that you guys are a team and in it together. So what you don't want is for it to become a us versus you. You want it to be us. And this is something that we are trying to do. This is something that we are working towards. And if you do that, then I think it provides a safe platform to have a conversation about how we can get better, not how you can get better. So those are kind of the thoughts that I had as I was reading through that thread. I think it's an important and challenging thing to engage in. So if we can do it well, it just comes down to simple relational dynamics. If we can do those well and express our faith first and foremost before we start critiquing each other and before we worry about the music, then I think that just provides a safe and important foundation for any worship team. So that's what I had for you guys today. If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe, but those are free to you and they help out a lot. And if you would like to jump into a community of worship people that we're trying to build, I have a link for a Discord channel below. If you'd like to support the channel financially, Patreon is also linked in the description below. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you soon.